Okay, so I'm going through the news this morning, and of course I'm looking for the article to talk about today, to dissect, to go through, and of course give you more context and information for that, of course, the mainstream media will never give you. And then I come across CNN, and I am absolutely shocked, stunned, mainly because they actually did a good job. Now, hold on. Don't leave yet. Please, don't leave. No. Hear me out here for just 1 second, please. Because trust me, I'm not a fan of the crap news network in any way, shape, or form. I confronted Paula Zahn face-to-face before. Questioned Aaron Burnett before. Wolf Blitzer, and of course, the media darling that is Anderson Cooper, not once, not twice. Oh, gee, what a surprise. When you type in "We Are Change," see it in Anderson Cooper in YouTube. I'm trying to find out exactly how many times I confronted him. And of course, we don't you type in "We Are Change," Anderson Cooper, nothing comes up. Okay, so it does look like I just confronted him twice. You just saw how rigged the algorithm is. But coming back to the original point here, CNN has even previously put out a fake copyright strike against this very news organization, a false strike with no merit that took away our live streaming ability for over a month and hurt this independent news organization for no reason with absolutely no ramifications at all. So trust me, the love affair here doesn't exist between me and CNN. But when it comes to this article, I think, even though this hurts to say this, I think they actually did a good job. But that's why in this video, we're going to read along this entire article and, of course, be hypercritical of it, giving you important context as we see it to, of course, the bigger ramifications behind this story. And by the way, this is all possible because you, the viewers, support us. And one way of supporting us is by literally buying a t-shirt on teesprings.com/store We Are Change, or the link will be just in the description, and you can buy new shirts that we just put out like this, at the same time representing your discontent with the brainwashed masses and supporting a small independent news organization. So yeah, if you need a t-shirt, check out our store. Okay, now moving forward to this article, which has been actually reposted by other alternative media that I actually trust. Let's get into this story, which is titled "Sold to an Ally, Lost to an Enemy." Exclusive report by, I can't believe it, CNN. The byline reads, "The U.S. shipped weapons and secrets to the Saudis and Emirates. Now some are in the hands of fighters linked to Al-Qaeda and Iran." A story which was developed by actually 4 journalists that we're going to get into right now. Now, before we even get into this article, the first things that are popping into my mind is, number one, that this is nothing new. This is something that I've been reporting on for a very long time, with even the second most popular video on our YouTube channel breaking all of this down in great detail. And we even knew from the Hillary Clinton emails that were released that she knew that Saudi Arabia and Qatar were funding ISIS and allowed it to happen. We knew that Obama, with his foreign policy, was creating the conditions to let the Islamic State rise. He knew this knowingly and willingly and supported those efforts because of the longer, bigger geopolitical goal the United States had, which was ousting Bashar al-Assad. So this is nothing new, but it seems like CNN is giving an exclusive report on another aspect of this. Now, if I'm being hypercritical, a little bit late to the game, especially since I've been talking about this since 2014 and even before, that a lot of times that this was happening knowingly by the United States, and in my opinion, from the evidence that I saw, on purpose. Let's see if CNN takes a very similar take on this particular issue. Or maybe if they're just running cover for, of course, the military-industrial complex. Let's just see. Let's keep reading here. The article states, "Saudi Arabia and its coalition partners have transferred American-made weapons to Al-Qaeda-linked fighters, hardline Salafi militias, and other factions waging war in Yemen in violation of their agreement with the United States," a CNN investigation has found. The weapons have also made their way into the hands of Iranian-backed rebels battling the coalition for control of the country, exposing some of America's sensitive military technology to Tehran and potentially endangering the lives of U.S. troops in other conflict zones. Okay, so the angle here is that a bunch of weapons were lost and they're ending up in a bunch of people's hands, which it seems like it's being attributed to malice, but we're going to see in a little bit. Now, again, this is not a surprise to me because when I was doing on-the-ground reporting in Mogadishu, Somalia, I also reported on the fact that the conditions have deterred so much in Mogadishu, mainly because of so much foreign intervention and not only money, but guns being sent down there by, of course, a number of government factions, and those guns ended up just being sold to the highest bidder, which was one of the major issues that the people of Somalia are dealing with right now in those larger ramifications. Now, again, the angle that CNN is taking here is that this is sensitive military technology in the hands of Iran that could potentially hurt American troops if the U.S. fights Iran. Again, I'm already not liking this. Continuing on, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, its main partner in the war, have used the U.S. manufactured weapons as a form of currency to buy the loyalties of militias or tribes, bolster chosen armed actors, and influence the complex political landscape, according to local commanders on the ground and analysts who spoke to CNN. Okay, so this is most likely an analyst, again, someone very anonymous. We should be skeptical of this. It could most likely be an intelligence officer or someone on the ground or even on the Pentagon, but again, let's not speculate here. Moving on, quote, by handling off this military equipment to third parties, the Saudi-led coalition is breaking the terms of its arms sales with the U.S., according to the Department of Defense. According to CNN, presented its findings, a U.S. defense official confirmed that there was an ongoing investigation into the issue. And predominantly, whenever you have a, quote, U.S. defense official, again, anonymous source here, saying that there's an ongoing investigation, it, again, not always, but predominantly this is the language of guilty people. Going on, quote, the revelations raise fresh questions about whether the U.S. has lost control over a key ally presiding over one of the most horrific wars over the past decade. Surprising to see CNN call the Yemen war one of the horrific wars in our past decades. That's a good admission here. That's an honest admission here. Continuing on with the stories, and whether Saudi Arabia is responsible enough to be allowed to continue buying the sophisticated arms and fighting hardware. Previous CNN investigations established that U.S.-made weapons were used as a series of deadly Saudi coalition attacks that killed dozens of civilians, many of them children. Yes, that is true, especially a Boeing missile that killed children. Continuing on, quote, the development also came as Congress, outraged with Riyadh over the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi last year, considers whether to force an end to the Trump administration's support for the Saudi coalition, which relies on American weapons to conduct its war. And again, it's not only just a big mistruth here is that it doesn't just rely on American weapons. It relies on American personnel, American fighter jets, American intelligence, U.S. soldiers on the ground in Yemen right now, as well as a bunch of American mercenaries and contractors, private militaries from the United States who are fighting for, of course, the rich Gulf oil states. Most importantly here, a bigger aspect that I haven't seen CNN mention yet, alongside radicals, alongside Wahhabis, alongside Al-Qaeda, and I'm not making this up. Share this video with your friends who don't know anything about what's going on geopolitically, but the United States is aligned not only with Saudi Arabia, but Al-Qaeda on the ground in Yemen right now, causing one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Like an important factor here, CNN, I wish you would have mentioned that, with, again, this even came out with an official investigation by the AP that found out that U.S. allies and Al-Qaeda are not only battling together, but the coalition that the United States is a part of in Yemen, fighting against the Houthi, Iranian-backed, mostly rebels, that coalition is going into territories where Al-Qaeda has a bunch of control, giving Al-Qaeda a bunch of money and saying, hey, just move away from here. Then they bring in the reporters and say, look, we got rid of Al-Qaeda in this region. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda, which is fighting alongside of them, is just incentivized and is becoming more and more financially supported as the U.S. coalition with Saudi Arabia is fighting against the Houthis. The United States is on the side of Al-Qaeda. I've literally been talking about this for years, been called a crazy person, a loony, a conspiracy theorist. Well, for freak's sakes, finally, AP and the CNN are even admitting it on some levels. Let's continue on with the CNN article here. In 2015, Riyadh launched a coalition to oust Iranian-supported Houthi rebels from the country's capital and reinstate the international recognized government of President Abu Rabu Mansour Hadi. That's a long name. The war split the country in two, and with it came the weapons, not just guns, but anti-tank missiles, armored vehicles, heat-seeking lasers, and artillery, all flooding into an unruly and complex state. Since then, some of America's beautiful military equipment, quoted as U.S. President Donald Trump once called it, has passed on, sold, stolen, or abandoned in Yemen's state of chaos, where murky alliances and frustrated politics means little hope for any system of accountability or tracking. Some terror groups have gained from the influx of U.S. arms. Okay, CNN, I think it's fair to say a lot of the terror groups have gained, not just from the influx of U.S. arms, but just from the United States. I think that's a very fair statement with all the evidence we have provided throughout the years. Continuing on, with the barrier of entry to advanced weaponry now lowered by the laws of supply and demand, militias leaders have been ample opportunity to obtain military hardware in exchange for the manpower to fight the Houthi militias. Arms dealers have flourished, with trades offering to buy or sell anything from a U.S.-manufactured rifle to a tank to the highest bidder. And Iran's proxies have captured American weapons they can exploit for vulnerabilities or reverse engineering for native production. Quote, "Do you have American guns here?" And here CNN actually portrays a video where, of course, you could just buy any kind of weapon in Yemen, specifically U.S. assault rifles. I'm just going to read the highlights here, where one of the arms dealers in Yemen said, quote, "The American guns are expensive and sought after," the weapons trader replied in an exchange captured by undercover CNN cameras. Oh, this is an interesting factor here. Quote, "One of the militias linked to AQAP," again, AQAP means the Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, "the Abu Abbas Brigade now possesses U.S.-made Oshkosh armed vehicles paraded in a 2015 show of force throughout the city." Again, Abu Abbas is, again, declared terrorist by the United States, which, of course, still has support from Saudi Arabia. And again, this is the tank that has been made by the United States and now is literally in the hands of Al-Qaeda. Sit with that for just think about that. Sit with that. Oh, wow, this is an interesting factor. News came out that Saudi Arabia and the UAE airdropped American-made TOW anti-tank missiles on the same front line where, of course, Al-Qaeda, AQAP, was operating. And again, this is not the first time that this has actually happened. It actually happened even in Syria, directly where ISIS was fighting along, and their positions were reinforced from U.S. airdrops, which, again, we captured and detailed on this channel years ago. So this is nothing new. And another reason why I don't think that this is accidental or just in the case of Saudi Arabia doing this. There's more to the story, of course, and I doubt CNN will highlight that. Again, local officials confirmed that the airdrop happened, and when CNN tried to investigate more, the team was intimidated by local government and couldn't find out more information. They also found paperwork for other very heavy U.S. military equipment there. Now, this is the interesting part here. Quote, "The United States has not authorized the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates to retransfer any equipment to parties inside Yemen," Pentagon spokesperson Johnny Michael told CNN. "The U.S. government cannot comment on any pending investigations that you might as well say you're just guilty of claims of end-use violations of defense articles and services transferred to our allies and partners." Well, here we go. More Iran information here, not a surprise here, that allegedly Iran is assessing this U.S. military technology very closely. This is pretty interesting. In September 2017, a Houthi-run TV channel broadcasted images of Mohammed al-Houthi, the de facto rebel leader, proudly sitting behind the wheels of a captured U.S.-made MRAP in the capital Sana'a as crowds chanted, quote, "Death to America" in the background. I mean, this might as well just be Boeing's slogan, as we, of course, discovered all of their hardware. not only in Syria, but now also in Yemen, and most likely all over the world, just in the hand of radical jihadis. Continuing on, CNN obtained an image showing the serial number of a second American MRAP in the hands of another senior Houthi officials last year in Houdini. Continuing on, the members of the force speaking to CNN anonymously out of fear for his safety, again, probably an intelligence officer, can't really trust anonymous sources, revealed that Iranian and Hezbollah advisors have already gotten their hands on the armored vehicles and other U.S. military hardware. Wouldn't surprise me, but I still don't understand the secrecy here. Interesting, CNN actually even requested a comment from Iran, which is pretty interesting. Moving on, third part of this article is in bold called the human cost of conflict. And the statement reads, quote, "The flood of U.S. weaponry is fueling a conflict that has killed tens of thousands, among them children on school buses and families fleeing violence, and pushed millions more to the brink of famine." Quick correction, it's not the brink, it is a famine. With some saying that it could even be the worst famine in the last 100 years. CNN actually showed a very kind of graphic images of a child starving, which of course we can't show here on this channel. That I think needs to be seen. Continuing on at the end of this article, it says, quote, "The U.S. is by far the largest supplier of arms to both Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and its support is crucial to the Saudi-led coalition's continuing war in Yemen." Again, a very failing war, which also geopolitically has huge ramifications, because it's clearly also showing the world that Saudi Arabia, even with its vast amount of money, still can't successfully have a victory militarily. Continuing on. But there is scant evidence that the White House wants to listen, despite evidence that the actions of a key U.S. ally may be making America less safe. Ending it with a Donald Trump quote when previously asked about the U.S. arms deal to Saudi Arabia, saying, quote, "I don't want to lose all of the investments being made into our country," quote, he said, end of article. And holy cow, I mean, honestly, not that bad of a job. It could have been way worse, obviously. I, like a lot of other rational people who look at geopolitical news, do believe that, radical Wahhabist Islamists like Al-Qaeda and ISIS are the bigger threat here, compared to, of course, Iran, which, of course, this article held the weight of that propaganda and pushed it, since, the bigger Wahhabist, radicalized Islamist, ISIS, Al-Qaeda groups have been the ones that have been committing the terrorist attacks actually in the West. And since a lot of their ideology comes from Saudi Arabia, which finances schools and mosques and other institutions in the West that promote that kind of core belief system, I do believe that that is a bigger problem. I think it's very clearly evident of that, other than Iran, which again isn't perfect, but when you're comparing the two, it is absolutely backwards that the United States is allies with Saudi Arabia. So yeah, that's my opinion. A broken clock could be right twice a day. Still kind of shocked and stunned to see these kind of, not really bigger, but like middle truths presented by CNN, especially in exclusive reports that actually highlighted evidence of it. Now, of course, I still distrust CNN like I would a fat kid with a big piece of cake. There's only one thing that's going to happen. But when someone surprises you, I think it's worth mentioning and giving credit where credit is due. But if you think I'm wrong, let me know why in the comment section below. I always try to answer questions and comments within the first hour that a video is out, so make sure you hit the notification button if you want to be a part of these bigger discussions coming up, because we usually provide videos and a live stream too many times a week here, of course, on our YouTube channel. And thank you so much for watching this and sticking along so long with us, and love you guys. Stay tuned for a lot more here on youtube.com/we are change.